So another example of money that we're going to look at is the money used in a game called Diablo 2. Now, I think this is going to be one of the most interesting examples we're going to look at. Now, the first time I saw Diablo 2 money being used to explain actual money was in Lynn Alden's book, Broken Money. Highly recommended book. Must read, by the way. Now, on the top of books, at the end of this course, I'm going to have a lecture where I have a list of recommended readings and recommended books. This one is definitely going to be on that list. So, Diablo 2 money. Why that resonated with me a lot? Because I used to play this game obsessively when I was young. So Diablo 2 is a game that came out in the year 2000. So when I was 13, 14, I would play this game every day. I was a gamer before I turned 18. And I used the money that was used in Diablo 2. And there's a lot of things we're going to learn from that money being used in a game. Well, first of all, in this game, the developers had created a specific form of money, which was like gold coins. Now, these gold coins didn't have really good properties. So let me show you a few videos of the game so you know what we're talking about. This is the game. So you start off and you select a character. There's a bunch of characters. You can choose the Amazon, Assassin, Necromancer, Barbarian, Paladin, and Sorcerer. This is the one that I used to play with the most. I love this one. And when you have a character, each character has different items they can use. For example, if you're the Barbarian, you can wield a two-handed axe. But if you're a Paladin, you can have a shield and a sword. If you're a Sorcerer, you can have a staff. I think the Assassin can use bows. So different classes can use different items. And when you play the game, you're just running around, killing minions, killing bosses. And when you kill these enemies, they drop things. They could drop gold or they could drop items. Now, since different, and let me take this off, we're not going to watch too much of it. Since different characters can use different items, there's an economy. You might want a specific axe or a specific shield or a specific staff that you don't have and somebody else have. So you would want to trade with one another. So there's an economy there. And this was one of the most sold games at the time. And there was a vibrant economy and a lot of people played that game. So they couldn't use the money that the developers proposed because the developer had coded a specific form of money, gold coins. But those gold coins were no good. They didn't fulfill these properties. They didn't require work to produce. For example, when you leveled up and when you were at a high level, when you killed minions or bosses, you would get so many of these gold coins that you could get the maximum amount carryable very quickly, very easily. So it didn't have any value. So people didn't use them to trade. And people weren't going to barter because we know how bartering is hard. So people found something to use as money. And what they ended up using as money was the Stone of Jordan, which was a small ring. Now, why did they end up using that? Well, because it fulfilled these properties the best. First, it required a lot of work to produce. Now here, let me say, when I say require a lot of work to produce, I'm not saying scarce. Because it's not scarce. This is a digital item. There's an infinite amount of it. Let me explain. How do you find a Stone of Jordan? So you'd have to play the game until one of the minions or bosses drops it. So there was a website we could use to figure out who has the best drop rate for this ring. And there was a boss called Andariel. And you would have to beat them at level Nightmare to have the highest probabilities of finding it. So what we would do as players is we would farm this boss. You would take a sorcerer, you would teleport to this boss and just kill them. And you keep doing that until they dropped that ring. That's how you produced that ring. You acquired it. Now, notice that I called it farming. Gamers call this farming, which is very similar to mining. So that's how you acquire a Stone of Jordan ring. And how much time did it take you to acquire one? When I used to play, it took about 40 hours to find one. So I would have to repeatedly kill this boss for about 40 hours until I would get one. And a lot of people did that. I know it seems weird as an adult talking about this, but even in today's games, that's how rare items work. You have to play a lot to find one of those rare items. So it required a lot of work to produce. It wasn't scarce because you can find an infinite amount of them. If you keep playing the game and everybody's killing this boss, there's just going to be more and more and more and more of this item. Nothing is really absolutely scarce in life, right? It just requires a lot of work to produce. Even when you think about something like, let's say, gold. Do you guys know that there's, let's write here, gold asteroids. There's an asteroid. Here, you can read it on Forbes. Or here, there's an asteroid that has gold worth 700 quintillion. So if we got all the gold from this asteroid, if we did asteroid mining, each person on planet Earth would have 93 billion worth of gold. Obviously, that would be so much gold that gold wouldn't be worth that. But this is just to prove the point that there is nothing that is absolutely scarce. There's an infinite amount of everything in the universe. Everything that you see on the elemental table is something that exists in the universe infinitely. So for gold, for example, the amount of gold just on Earth that is still in the Earth crust is so much, like you would not believe how much there is, especially if you go deeper in the Earth crust. And we haven't gotten that gold because the work required to get it is too high that it's not worth getting. But even if we exhaust all the gold on Earth, we could, go and get gold from asteroids. But again, only if the work required to get it is worth it. Right now, it isn't. So nothing is really scarce. It's just the work required to produce it that is too high. So when we're looking at something that's digital, and this is why this example is interesting as well, because now we're talking about something digital, like the money we use today, which is 90% digital, or other things we're going to talk about. So when something is digital, you can create as much of it as you want. But here, it's the requiring work that we're looking at. So even though there's an infinite amount of it, getting that amount requires a lot of work. So for example, if I'm a sorcerer and I want a specific staff, and somebody tells me, okay, well, that staff costs 3 soges, so 3 Stone of Jordans. I'm going to have to make a calculation. Do I play the game and try to find the staff, kill bosses to find the staff, or do I go and I kill Andariel for about 120 hours until I get 3 Stones of Jordans, and I go and I trade those Stones of Jordans for that staff? Or I trade other items that I have for Stones of Jordan, and then those Stones of Jordan for the staff. I'd have to make that calculation. So this is one of the reasons this item became money, because it required a lot of work to produce. But not only that, well, it's durable like everything else, it's very portable. So if you look at the game again, there's inventory. So you can hold things in your inventory. Let's see if we can find this here. Okay, so you can have your helmet, you can have armor, you can have an axe, and this is the ring. It doesn't take a lot of space. It only takes 1 unit of space. Compared to, like, let's say a sword, which can take 3, axes can take 8 space units. So it takes only 1, the smallest amount. So it's very portable. You can keep it in your pocket. Now, other things are small too, like potions, but they have no value. So it's both, requires a lot of work, so maintains value, and portable, verifiable. You know what it is. It's not divisible, but again, doesn't need to be because it's small enough. And it's fungible. All Stones of Jordans are the same. So here, players of the game, even though the developers had created a form of money, had coded a form of money for them to use, since that form of money was no good, didn't fulfill these properties, players chose to use something else as money. Now, how did they do that? Did they log into a forum and decided which item to use as money? No. Again, it emerged naturally, bottoms up from the users. How did this happen? Well, since this item had these properties of requiring work, people accepted it as a store of value. So if they wanted to trade for something, but the other person didn't have that thing, they would accept that item. Now, as more and more people accepted that item and transacted more with it because it has these valuable properties, and that network effect grew, where it started becoming a medium of exchange, where more and more people traded with one another because it has these properties, then it started becoming a unit of account, and people started accounting for things in that unit. And then there was websites you can go on and forums that had a list of every single item denominated in sojas. So I could know that this staff is 3 sojas, and that this crossbow was 2, and this helmet cost 1. So everything was accounted in Stones of Jordan, and Stones of Jordan became money. That was the main currency used in this game. For the whole period of time that I played this game, where there was a huge, vibrant economy of trading, the de facto money was Stones of Jordan. And who chose that? It emerged naturally. Now, one funny thing that happened is that, like all the other forms of money that we looked at, Stones of Jordans also died as a form of money, for the same reasons that the other ones died. So later on, when we cover the reasons for money dying, we're also going to cover why this one died. So we've made it to the last lecture of this section, where we finally get to answer this big question of what is money. So far, we've learned a bunch of different things about money. We've learned about what money solves for. We've learned at what makes the best form of money, so salability. We've learned about characteristics and properties of money, and how money emerges naturally due to its properties. But we haven't defined what money is exactly quite yet. So what is money? When you think about it, what do you have to do to get money? To acquire money, to produce money, to earn money? You have to work. We've talked about this, right? So if you have to work to earn money, what does this money give you in return? Well, it gives you a claim on somebody else's work. Just think about it. You work to earn money. And then when you have money, you turn around and you can claim somebody else's work. So somebody else has to work to earn that money from you. So it's a claim on somebody else's work. When you compare this to barter, where you're exchanging surplus for surplus, here you're exchanging your work, your surplus, for money, and then that money somebody else has to work and exchange something for it. So it's a claim on somebody else's work. Now, it's not a claim on just one specific person's work. If you go one level further, you realize that it's actually a claim on anyone else's work that is using that money. So if you live in a specific country that is using a specific money, you work to acquire this money, and then you can turn around and anybody else is going to want to work to acquire this money from you. So for you, you can claim somebody else's work in this entire economy. So if you dig one level further, you realize that actually, so money is a claim on a portion of all the goods and services that are available. So again, for you to acquire the money, you had to work, provide a good or service or something to earn that money. And in return, when you have that money, it gives you a claim on any of the goods and services available in the economy, a portion of them. So if you dig one level more, and this is how we're going to define money, is that it's a claim on a portion of the available productive capacity in an economy. And what, available productive capacity, just a fancy way of saying goods and services and anything else that can be used to create goods and services. It's an economical way of saying that. So it's really a way of saying everything that's available. So when you work to earn money, you can then turn around with that money, and that money gives you a claim on anything that's available. So that's what money is. So let's look at it through an example. Let's say you live in a specific region, in a specific country. And in this country, there's all these goods and services available. There's all this productive capacity available. There's some blueberries, there's apples, there's horses, there's some workers. And in that economy, in that country, people are using cowrie shells as money. And there are 10 shells in that economy. That's the total money supply. That's the total amount of units available. And you previously worked hard to acquire, to earn one of these shells. So you own one shell out of the 10 total shells available, out of the total money supply. So you own 10% of the shells. So that one shell out of 10 gives you a proportional claim on the available productive capacity in the economy. So now you can turn around and you can claim any of these things that you would want to get. You can claim 10% of the things available because you own 10% of the money supply. This is a simplified way of looking at it. We're gonna build on top of this. But this is what money is. It's a claim on total available productive capacity. And you can start realizing what would happen if somebody could create some shells out of thin air. What would happen to your claim? If money is a proportional claim on total productive capacity, what would happen if somebody can create some out of thin air? This is what we're going to be answering in the next section. But in this section here, we finally defined it. What is money? It's a claim on a portion of the available productive capacity.